What's up, everybody? One Fun Guy podcast in the studio. I have my guest tonight is going to be History Buff. Before we get in the episode with him, I am just going to tell you guys that tonight's sponsor is the Clubhouse Inc. If you like the shirt I'm wearing or any of the other ones I've worn in the past, it's www.shoptheclubhs.com. That's www.shoptheclubhs.com, or here on Facebook under the Clubhouse Inc. Just type it in the search button and they will pop up. So thanks for the Clubhouse for sponsoring this episode, and we'll get into it. So, a History Buff, you are the first guest that I've had back on the show, so welcome back.
Oh, I'm the first.
Yeah.
The first to go second. That's great.
Yes. Awesome.
So I must not have completely killed it, you know.
No, you were awesome.
Destroyed your algorithm.
No, this is
you left
great.
Crying.
So, yeah. Love to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
Nice. So we'll pick up where we left off from last time. So just tell us a little bit how you're feeling, what's going on, and
yeah. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, I guess to backtrack a little bit, I lost my father in January, and, you know, a lifetime of just EMS and death and all that high stress that I normally was fine with. It just kind of came imploding in on me all at once. And it kind of messed me up. I had a lot of, you know, chest pain. I had to get my heart checked out. I had a lot of, gastric problems, a lot of, going number 2 problems and things.
Right.
And when you start thinking about stuff, you know, everything leads you towards cancer and stuff. So, I mean, I was almost to the point where I was pretty much convinced that my life was kind of on the short end, and,
right.
Not getting too much into everything, but I mean, I finally ended up having a colonoscopy. I had to take medicine, and that was messing me up and everything. But I'm still in the medicine. So just some things that I learned really quick. I mean, I guess I could say,
fill us in.
Everything came back great, like great. My heart's great.
Excellent.
My GI, everything from my mouth down is totally fine. They did find a cyst on my liver, but I guess that's incredibly normal, I guess, which I saw that. I'm looking at I'm like, what is that?
Right.
Is it supposed to be there? She's like, not really, but I'm like, okay, I see this. But anyways, I guess it's normal. So I got to follow up with them tomorrow. But anyways, so some things that I've definitely learned is if you are put on some meds, just give it a chance, you know, because I think by the time when I talked to you, I was just starting to kind of regulate after about 3 weeks, but the first handful of weeks are nightmarish, you know, and usually whatever symptoms you're having are going to be 10 times worse, really. And they were. I was having panic attacks every day, and it was bad. And so, you know, so just keep going with that, you know, give it a good 6 to 8 weeks to make sure that it's great. And right now, like I said, I feel absolutely amazing. And then once I had my scope and everything, and everything came back normal, I mean, knock on wood, I just feel great. And I mean, I don't want to take away from anybody who is truly struggling with that.
Sure.
Because I definitely have a new appreciation for, you know, because I just started thinking what goes through your mind when you have to constantly, it seems like in my brain, if they were to say, hey, you have an issue, we got to get a biopsy, then we got to get a surgery. It seems like the rest of your life, you're spent constantly just waiting for news, waiting for that next test. And I'm just like, I don't know if I can even live like that. So whoever, and it's stuff you don't think about, you know, until you are kind of thinking about it. So to anybody who is going through that, I mean, give you major props.
Yeah.
And I happen to work with,
I went through that. So I'm the person. So
that's right.
All my surgeries, all my stuff, the unknown, still to this day, I don't know what the future is going to hold. So I can speak from experience that it's difficult to manage, because the unknown is a scary thing, right? So not knowing what is going to happen once you're diagnosed with something, I had an abscess in my intestine. That's how my travesty all started. And surgery after surgery after surgery after surgery, things just kept going wrong for me. And so finally, after, you know, a year and a half of being off of work, going through several surgeries, I didn't know what was going to happen next. So you know, you know, from my perspective of it, you know, to tell you that it will get better, right? Everything will kind of go back into place, and your body will adapt, and it will start to get better. But even till this day, 3.5 years after my first surgery, I'm still recovering. And I'm not the same person I was in 2020 before my surgery. I'm a completely different human being now.
Yeah. I'm sure you take less things for granted, but at the same time, you're living in this kind of limbo land of just,
so I truly had a second chance. I was very close to not being on this planet anymore. So it puts things in perspective, and that was really one of the main reasons why I started the podcast, was because it was just something that I've wanted to do. And it was just, listening to podcasts got me through a lot of what I was going through, just because I just didn't want to watch TV anymore. It was just boring, right?
Yeah.
You can only binge so much TV before your brain is ready to just explode. So I would just get headphones and kind of listen to podcasts and doze off. And that's kind of how it started.
Yeah.
So
I hear you. And I mean, the things that I definitely took away from it was, like just what anxiety can do to you, like, or what, how it affects you physically. I mean, it affects everything physically, and, and with panic attacks, I mean, you truly feel like it's over, I'm just, this is how I'm going to die. I'm here laying here. My son's over there. And this is how he's going to find, that's what you think, So like, there's that, and the other thing too, is just kind of like trusting your body and how you feel. You know what I mean? Like, don't ever blow that stuff off. And, and I remember being a paramedic all those years. And the moment I heard the word anxiety, I'm like, oh, it's anxiety. It's just nothing's going on, and right away you just, bro, that's all it is. Yeah, you got chest pain. Yeah, your heart rate's 200. Yeah, you're this and that, but it's anxiety, but just truly seeing it's not something that's like fake, or it's on the side burner. It still kills your body, and it just so again, just a lot to learn. So
well, I'm glad you're doing better now. That's awesome. So
appreciate it.
So your relationship with your father was a good one, right? Like, because me and my dad were super close, and my dad, he passed away in 2020. Today he would have been 85. His birthday was May 10th. So I did a little dedication to him. I played that video with Tom Brady where, they asked him who his hero was, and he's like, my dad, and my dad was my hero. So, which is, it's unique when you have a relationship with your father, like I'm sure you and your son have that bond. But like my dad was my best friend. Like he was super close. We talked every day. There wasn't a day that went by where I didn't call home and talk to him and my mom. So it was, and my mom lives with us now. So, after he passed, she came to stay with us. But, me and my dad were super close. You were close with your dad, I assume then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, they were divorced when I was like 7 or 8, but still he was always there. He was, he was always great. And I mean, it was to the point where my mom got remarried, and and he treated me great too, but I still to this day will not call him dad. I just won't. And it's not because of it's just because I mean, my dad is my dad. He's an amazing guy, and and he's one of those people that it's like it's just impossible to hate him. You know what I mean? And I know that sounds so cliche, but this is like never been more literally said, like almost to a fault, where it's like, come on, dad, be pissed about that. Like, really, that doesn't upset you? You need to go punch him in it. And, what? So he just, I don't know. And then I got the fiery part from my mom, you know what I mean? So I'm a weird balance, but and then I went back, I went up north. My mom's retirement party. I went up north, and so I got to visit my dad's grave for the first time, and it was still fresh, kind of fresh dirt on it. They hadn't put grass on it yet. There was no headstone on it yet, so I had to kind of like do some recon and figure out where he was, and it was just odd. You know what I mean? I never expected to be talking to my dad like that, I still had a nice long conversation with him, whether or not he heard me. It depends on how you feel about those things, but like, I got to say a lot of things that I didn't get to tell him, and I was standing there bawling, and I don't care if anybody sees me, because I grabbed a couple of rocks that were kind of like in the dirt where he was at, and brought them home and gave them to my kids, and
I was the same way.
You do what you can,
the first time I went back, because so my dad, he's buried in Mount Carmel, which is a huge cemetery in Illinois, and that's kind of where like all the famous people are, like the mobsters are there, the Cardinals are there, like, so it's a very big cemetery. It's both sides of the street on Roosevelt, so it's a big, huge cemetery. But I remember the first time I went, and I was the same way. Like, it's very weird, and I know I shouldn't like think like this, but like my mom wants to get the headstone, right? My dad's been passed now for a couple of years, and I am very weirded out about putting my mom's name on the headstone with my dad, knowing she's still alive, and that born date dash blank end date freaks me out. And I keep telling her, I'm like, I hate that idea. And she's like, yeah, but we have to honor your father. We have to get him a gravestone. And I'm like, Mom, it really freaks me out And like death is
Can't
a
they?
part of
Okay,
life,
if
right?
they can add the end date, can't they add her name later?
No, they won't. They want to do everything. The only thing they want is the end date. They put both names on it, and it
If
freaks
you're
me out.
if you're leaving the end date off, you can leave something else off too. I don't
That's what
know.
I
That's
said, and
weird.
they won't. Yeah, so it
It's so
just it's
weird.
weird. And again, Mount Carmel is a huge Catholic cemetery, and
Uh,
everything has to go through certain regulations. The gravestone can
wow.
only be an inch thick; it can't be 2 inches. It has to be done a certain way. It has to be cut a certain way. It has to be placed a certain way. And there's only like two companies that are allowed to put headstones in the cemetery. So you only have two options. It's one or the other company, and both companies are like, nope, this is how we do it. And it
Yeah,
just it super freaks me out. And I
that
don't know
that would be
why,
weird.
but it's just. And so I keep telling my mom, I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm like, I know you want to
Yeah.
give dad respect and get a headstone. I'm like, I am not putting your name on it with
I
with a
mean, if she's
blank.
cool with it, I could understand though. Like,
She's cool with it. It freaks me out. It's
yeah.
just so weird,
Dude, so
man.
you remind me of something. I didn't even tell my wife this. I wanted to tell my wife this because I thought it was funny as hell. But as I'm in the middle of bawling, right? I'm standing there crying. I look down and he doesn't have a headstone, but at his feet, there's a headstone and it has a husband wife, right? Like
Uh
you're
huh.
saying, but it's the situation where the wife was already dead, but the husband was still alive. And so she was in there and you could tell he was going to be there one day. I told my wife, my dad, he was a hell of a ladies man. Like
Yeah.
everybody loved him. I go, Dad, you better leave her the hell alone. Her husband's coming, man. Like,
Yeah.
keep your hands off.
You know.
And it was enough to kill the mood for him, to at
Yeah.
least make me chuckle. I'm like,
Right.
you better behave down here with Mrs. So and so.
Yeah. It's
But
it's funny because like I was the same way. So the first time I went, I actually FaceTime my wife called me and said, "Where are you at?" And I didn't tell her I was going because I knew I was just going to break down, right? And it was going to happen. So she FaceTimed me and my eyes are all wet, and she's like, "What's the matter?" And I was like, I'm here at the cemetery, like I just happened to be in the neighborhood, and I was like, I stopped by, and so it was just like surreal, just kind of seeing it because the last time I had been there before was when we buried my dad, and it was just kind of, and it's really weird because I'm open about it now, but most Catholic people don't want to cremate their body; they want to put the casket in. And my
yeah,
dad's best friend is a funeral director, and so when he passed and we went to him, he's like, "Your dad was a great guy." He goes, "But he wouldn't want you to waste money on this." He goes, and I'm being honest with you. He's like, the casket and the burial and everything is super expensive. He's like, just do the cremation. That's what it's the safest way to go. It's the best way to go. And he's like, that way you and your because my parents bought two plots for caskets. So my mom and my dad. Well, now that they can share one, it'll be me and my wife will have the other one. So, but it's just a weird concept because like I was always about the burial and the casket, and he's like, you're wasting money. He's like, your dad would not want you to do that. So it was a
there
unique
you go.
perspective from a funeral director, like to talk us out of the tradition of, the
Yeah. I mean, it
so
seems
it's
a lot of Catholics are even kind of seeming to veer away from that a little more. You know what I mean?
yeah
I think at one point it was kind of like in the catechism as far as like, but I don't know. I'd have to look. I got it right there.
yeah.
See what
So
they
I don't
say
know.
about
It
it.
was
But
just yeah, it was
hmm,
just unique because like I said, we had he had been a funeral director for 50 years at that point, and his sons are taking over, and he was like, he wouldn't want you to waste money like that. So it ended
it's
up,
crazy. Yeah.
yeah. So it was unique, but now like the perspective is a little bit different because now it's nice that me and my wife will be buried next to my mom and dad, so it'll be kind of cool.
Yeah. As long as she got along with them, that's cool.
Yeah. So
My wife asked
yeah,
me about that. My in-laws, I might be, but anyways,
yeah. So
so
yeah.
it's,
So let's move on. I got a question to ask. So I watched your episode with Steve Buchanan of Unleash the Archers. That was awesome, by the way.
you say
Um,
Steve or Scott?
Scott, I met Scott, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
so Scott, yeah. So he was awesome. Can I ask how you kind of got? I know you did the one with Brittany,
Hmm.
and she was awesome. How did you come across like getting to have him on? Is that
Ooh, you
something?
want to know my secrets? I could tell you, no, it's fine. So basically, I guess I can go back to Discord's pretty cool. I don't know. Are you on Discord at all?
I am Discord, yeah.
You mess with Discord? So there is a a Discord channel called Night Dreamers Reacticide, and it's thousands of people who basically all they do is watch Nightwish reaction videos, right?
Okay.
So pretty early on, I joined this group, and they have this pretty cool setup where there's like this VIP lounge for reactors. So you go in there, and there's like Tank the Tech. I don't know if you know Tank the Tech, or
Yeah,
like
he actually just had Brittany on. He just did a Unleash the Archers video. Was his last episode.
Yep. Elizabeth Tarkoff from Charismatic Voice. A few other people. I became really good friends with. I don't know if you've seen Mike and Ginger. They're this couple from Canada, but they ended up moving to like Costa Rica or something. But anyways, so I started talking to Elizabeth Zarkov's husband, and I don't know if I told you this before, but like he used to work, I think, at like Lockheed Martin or something as a director.
Okay.
And he said Elizabeth has gotten so huge, and the way that they have the whole thing set up where, you know, she's whitelisted for any music video she does, she's whitelisted. She does not get copyright at all. The moment she is copyrighted, they have a team of lawyers to attack it because they use this might be too much information. I don't know, but this is good stuff to know for people who want to be YouTubers, right?
Yeah.
But she uses the Fair Use Act by making it educational because she talks about vocal technique, right? So somebody like me doing history, I don't have a team of lawyers. So if they want to copyright slam it, they could give me a big middle finger and be like, what are you going to do about it? Right.
Right.
Well, she's going to do something about it. So they've built that into this little empire where he's able to quit his job and make 5 times more than he did at Lockheed Martin just through the videos she does. Right. So I'm sitting here chatting with him, and she just had Brittany Slays on. I go, dude, if you don't mind me asking, like, do you have a contact or something? He goes, yeah, sure. So he gave me the contact. It's their head marketing person for Napalm Records.
Okay.
And cool. So he gave me her email. I emailed her. She was very receptive, and she's like, you know what, Brittany and them are busy now. She's like, but you know what, if you do history, we have this band called Ad Infinitum that's just now kind of gaining traction. She kind of gave me a little background. It's historical. The first album was all about like the French Revolution and stuff. Second album was like about Vlad the Impaler. Have you heard of Ad Infinitum?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Oh my God, she is so hot. Oh my God. But anyways, and by that I mean Melissa Bonney. So she's like, Melissa Bonney would love to talk to you. I'm like, oh, sweet. Okay. So I set up, and that's the first interview I ever did was with Melissa Bonney.
Okay.
And so, and it went well. I didn't know enough about her. You know, it's not like my interviews with Unleash the Archers where it's like I know everything about them. It was a decent interview, especially for my first one. And then shortly after that, I was able to get Brittany Slays through there. So honestly, I'm to the point now where like I talk to this occasionally. Her name's Natalie. She'll send me and be like, "Hey, I got another band for you if you want to check them out." And I listen to it, and it'd be like kind of that screamo death metal. I'm like, no, I don't, you know. And so basically any bands like Fierschwanz or Ailstorm or anybody from Napalm Records, I can basically interview them whenever I want to.
That's
where
fantastic.
I'm at. It's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, it's so cool to have that in. And I think I told you last time maybe that I reached out to her. I was going to do Chris Knowles from Ailstorm. And she said, well, they're going to be touring for a long time, but you could meet up with them at one of the shows and we'll pay for your ticket and all that other stuff. And you can actually interview them backstage.
Yeah, right.
So that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, and that's
honestly,
like if I was single and, you know, right now money situation is not great, you know,
sure.
So I can't just hop a plane and do stuff.
I
but I mean, the opportunity's there. So I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, that's it's their Napalm Records.
Now with somebody, so like I said, I've been using TikTok as a networking platform. And actually, I met a musician. His name's Kaji. He's going to be a guest on my show in June. How is it like? How hard or easy is it setting up something with like somebody like Scott, who's got a super busy schedule, being a new dad, practicing?
Dude,
like,
okay.
How does he find time? Like, do you have to like set it up around his schedule, or was he cool about like? Because that's the problem I'm running into now is finding time to do it with guys that are super busy. And you know, Kaji goes live on TikTok every day and makes hundreds of dollars when he goes live because that's his thing. He plays guitar and he follows.
It's got to be worth their while, right?
Right. So he was like, he's like, just give me a time. Well, I didn't realize he was in Denmark. So when it's our 9 o'clock, it's his 2 o'clock. So the time alone from Europe to the US is different. And then his schedule, he goes live on TikTok for hours at a time and plays guitar. And he covers all these cool Spirit Box is one of the bands that he's like huge into. He plays but the guy is like, he could go to any band and be a guitarist, like, but he opts to do the TikTok and Instagram stuff to make money that way. So he stays in his studio and plays.
Probably better. I mean,
yeah.
So, I mean, it honestly depends on the artist, like 120%. You know, I could give you a bunch of examples. The time that I hung out with Matt Nilsson from Brothers of Metal, it was basically just he commented on one of my videos. I'm like, holy shit, you know, hey.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started writing him, you know, talking to him back, and I'm like, hey, I'd like to have you guys on as an interview for an interview or something like that. And he's like, and then he shoots me an email. And he's like, hey, I'm here. What do you need? I'm like, okay. And so I just talked to him direct. I go, do I have to go through your record label or anything like that? He's like, no, man, just we'll set it up, you know. We set it up. So it was supposed to be him and the other two lead singers. I know there's 3 lead singers, right?
Right.
But so he basically the other 2 didn't show up, and they were like busy or whatever. And he's like, oh, it's just me. And I'm like, well, we could still do it. I mean, this is cool. He's like, well, I don't know. And I'm kind of glad we didn't record it, because we ended up talking about a lot of shit, like stuff that we would have never aired. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he was talking smack about this, about that, about the industry, about the, you know, like, so it was really neat. And we started geeking out. Like I started grabbing some of my sources on Norse mythology, and he's running off and grabbing his, like, well, this is all in Swedish, but you know, it's this, and it's, you know, like, it was really cool, you know. So you've got that end of the spectrum. Then you've got like Napalm Records, where Natalie will literally get pissed if you talk to the people directly. So like when I was setting up with Melissa Bonney, I'm waiting and she's not showing up or whatever. All of a sudden I get an email. Hey, this is Melissa. I'm supposed to interview with you, but blah, blah, blah. Right. I'm like, oh, so I'm chatting with her back. And then something happened where all of a sudden out of nowhere, Natalie emails me like, are you talking to her? You're not supposed to be talking to her. I'm like, she called me.
Right.
And so every now and again, I'll mess with her and be like, you got to tell your artist to stop like harassing me and hounding me. I need my privacy, you know, just shit like that.
Yeah. So do you ever have to navigate where people who kind of do talk bad about the business, or is it like, do you kind of, I'm only asking because I have a guy coming up on my show. He's the singer at Darkwater. His name's Jordan Miller. And we talked, and I was like, listen, he's like, I'm an open book about the music business. He's like, I've been doing this my entire adult life. He's like, and the way that the industry is now, he goes, is not the same industry it was 10 years ago when I started. And I was like, do you want to talk about that? And he's like, I would love to talk about that. But he's got such a like unique perspective on it, because he does his own recordings. He's his own producer. He's his own, like, he dropped labels. He dropped everybody who could make money off of him. He does it all himself now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the best thing I could say is just put it in their court, man. I mean, does it matter to you if you cross a line?
No, personally, like,
yeah.
And I'm not, I just don't want to like, you know, I have music fans that watch this. So
sorry, that's fine. Fix that.
Oh no, you're fine. From a perspective of it, I think that like, I don't want to shed bad, you know, expectations on anybody's industry, right? So like, that's why I keep my mouth shut about law enforcement. I keep my mouth shut about, you know, politics. I keep my mouth shut about all that. But
the other thing you can do is it going to be live?
Yeah, we'll do it live like this.
Okay. Because like what I always say to anybody before we start is I always say, listen, I'm going to edit this later. So please, if we ever get into anything that you're uncomfortable with, just tell me. Just please edit that last part or whatever, you know. And I was especially like that with Scott. I wasn't like that really with anybody else, but with Scott, I'm like, listen, I got some questions about, you know, your new daughter, and I'm a dad. I totally get it. So he's like, oh no, whatever, man. You know, like, you know, he was real cool with it, but I'm just like, just let me know if I cross any lines, you know. And a couple questions about his relationship with Brittany, and he was hilarious, man. So let me bounce back to your other question real quick. So the way things went down with Scott was fucking hilarious, because again, we're not supposed to talk directly, right? But out of nowhere one day, he's like, hey, we're supposed to have an interview, I think. He's like, but do you mind if we move it a little bit later in the day? I've got some plans. I'm like, dude, that's totally fine, man. So it's time. Okay, I'll keep you updated. So all day long, he's like, hey, listen, we're over here now, but we're going to be leaving in like 2 hours. And I'm like, Scott, dude, don't worry about me, man. I said, we could do it tomorrow if you want. No. I want to do this. Let me just get on the road. So he'll be like, hey, man, I'm on the road now. just drive. Stop fucking stop emailing me, right? And I even asked him, I'm like, are you sure Natalie doesn't care we're talking? He's like, screw Natalie, right? So when the time finally came, I'm like, it was getting late for me. It was like almost 9:00, and he was just now getting home. He's like, can we still do it? I'm like, yeah, dude, it's like almost 9:30. I need to get to bed. And I said, I'd like to talk to you. And I said, I'm tired, man. And he's like, oh, no, I get it. So he's like, I'm free all day tomorrow, whenever you want to do it. So he actually got up early because he's on the West Coast.
Okay.
I think we did it like 9:00, or it was 7:00 his time or something. And he's talking to me, and I guess they were doing a frisbee golf tournament.
Okay.
Out in the woods. I'm like, dude, you're so Canadian, man. It's great. But yeah. So I mean, so that's another side of the spectrum. Like Scott was just so, and even to this day, he'll shoot me an email out of nowhere.
Okay.
Just kind of bullshitting. I was asking him about getting maybe some, can I do any kind of VIP or meet with them? And he's like, oh yeah, So just a super cool guy. I'm glad you enjoyed, and you saw that we had a good time. We started bullshitting about like all kinds of goofy stuff,
Yeah. I actually liked this segment when you were talking about his gear, because, he was saying that he, decreased all his stuff. He's just kind of simple now, right? It's like not a big kit anymore. It's just kind of like, and it's, when you look at like drummers, like when I saw him live, he had a great kit, right? The two double basses and and now it's kind of like, when I was watching, he's like, oh, I shrunk that all down. He's like, I don't, the useless stuff doesn't really matter anymore. He's like, I just kind of keep it simple. And it's like, and you would think that a band like getting the notoriety they're getting now, especially with a lot of these bigger names being associated with them, that their kits would expand, right? That they'd want more, and they're getting more sponsorships, and they're getting more. He's like, no, just keep it simple. He's like,
never mind. He's like 7 foot tall too.
Yeah. So
guy's a monster.
Yeah, it was a really good interview. So I was just kind of like, but for me, like I said, I've dabbled now more into the music side of stuff, and I get the responses I get back from the couple of the musicians that I have are like, can I be candid about the music business? And I'm like, oh, I'd really like that. But I was like, it's kind of a wishy-washy thing, right? Because you don't want to stab the business that, feeds your family. But, especially with Jordan's like, I work a normal job. He's like, I have a 9 to 5. He's like, I go to work every day. He goes, music is just something I do on the side. He's like, there's not enough money in the industry to make it anymore. He's like, there's no way to support ourselves. He's like, so I go to work. He's like, the rest of my band is too. He's like, we're not, he's like, we're musicians and we play live. We go on tour. We play festivals. We do everything. He's like, but it's not enough to support a family anymore. He's like, I had to go back to work. He's like, I work third shift because I have to put food on my family's table. And he's like, music doesn't cut it anymore.
Well, you got to think about it this way too. I mean, these guys do interviews, like big time interviews, excuse me. And you're going to get all the candid, you know what I mean? Watered down responses.
Yeah.
If he wants to be candid on your channel, I said candid, you know what I mean? The opposite of that.
Yeah.
If he wants to be candid on your channel, let him have it, dude.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you'll have a little unique flavor that a lot of people probably don't get to hear,
Yeah. Because like I said,
go for it.
Haji,
he's comfortable with it. Go for it.
Yeah, because I've been back and forth with him. But again, he even said, he's like, I will make more money being at home, playing in front of, 200 or 300 people that are gifting me money versus going on tour. He's like, I would make way more doing this. And there's a couple other people, on Instagram that I follow too. Johnny Boy's one of them. He covers all the Zach Wild stuff and plays, he's an awesome guitarist. And I asked him, I'm like, dude, why don't you like get in a band and like go tour? He's like, I make more money doing this. I'm like, awesome.
I think that's what Tommy Johansson's doing from, how he quit Sabaton. I think he makes more money on YouTube and stuff.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you think about it, and again, I just got into TikTok recently. I'm just in the game now. But when you see people go live and they get gifts and people like send them galaxies and stuff like that, that's $30 that they make. And if they get 4 or 5 of those, that's $150 that they just made in an hour. If they do that for 3 or 4 hours, they could make $300 or $400 or $500 a day. If you times that, by, doing that for 3 or 4 hours, you've made $1,000 in a week. You've made $7,000 in a week. I don't make $7,000 a month, let alone like what the potential is. So, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, like using that leverage to, especially if you're popular and you're famous, it's hard to go back to doing when you can just literally sit in your room and go live.
I did a live stream one time where I said all it was titled was I need a new bottle of scotch. and people, you would think I was on a pole or something. They were throwing money at me. Like, I think I made
Yeah,
like $400 that night, just bullshitting. You
right.
know what I mean?
And so it gets the wheel spinning, right? Because so, I told my wife, I'm like, what if I did this TikTok thing like seriously, right? Like, what if I literally like jumped into it and went live every night? Now, obviously, I work, right? So I don't have the luxury of doing it every night because I go to bed early and but I'm thinking to myself, like, if I were to make $300 a day, I don't make that at work, right? So
Yeah.
if I make $1,000 a week and I can clear 4,000 a month and I don't have to leave my house, why not? So I don't know. The wheels are
Yeah.
spinning. It's just a unique anomaly of
It's what everybody wants to
social
do now,
media that
man.
is just
It does make me wonder though, with the economy the way it's kind of going. I mean, hell, groceries are getting more. Like, if what's going to happen if that's going to be considered kind of just disposable income. You know what I mean?
well, yeah, it's weird, but
Because during
you,
COVID, I
right,
mean, honestly, that was the heyday, man. Like for
yeah,
YouTube, that's when I started. That's when, I mean, actually, I started before COVID, I think, but that was where it was huge.
yeah, and
And
so
I'm
it's just
seeing it kind of taper a little bit, but
it
still, man.
has, and now obviously the big thing, like I said, I don't really get political, but like TikTok's talking about going away for the U.S. Right? If ByteDance doesn't sell their shares, they don't want U.S. to be a part of it anymore. TikTok's not going anywhere. The rest of the world is going to enjoy it. The U.S. isn't going to be a part of it. I know Kevin O'Leary's one of the guys that said he wants to buy it. Mr. Wonderful. He said that he's got 3 or 4 partners that are multi-billionaires that can buy it and do whatever they want with it. I know that there's a couple other people have said that they would be interested in purchasing it. I just watched an article the other day said ByteDance does not want to sell. They want to keep their ownership of it, which means that the United States won't be a part of it anymore because it passed under the Ukraine bill to not be a part of it. So, it'll be a while, through the legal system, but it's just kind of like, that's the risky thing, right? You make 5 grand a week on TikTok and all of a sudden it's gone. What do you do now? Like, you have to go back to, you can't do it
Yeah.
anymore, or you'd have to move to Mexico or Canada where it's still legal to get on it.
Yep. And I mean, at the drop of a dime, any of these laws can change too. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like how you monetize and all kinds of stuff. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes the way copyright works, it's there's a lot to it, man.
Yeah. So there's a YouTuber I watch and he's actually kind of real. He's famous. He's producer Michael. He does like high end luxury stuff, but he actually did an episode one day where he talked about the money that you could be made on YouTube. And he's got 1 million+ subscribers. And he said, this is what I make, but this is what I pay my production team, my stuff. And he breaks it down. And, he's already a multimillionaire. He's worth like 75 or 80 million, but he's got 1.7 million YouTube subscribers and he makes a lot of money on YouTube alone. But it's just one of those things where like you have more and more people now are open about talking about monetizing their YouTube channel, what they actually make and what they get from YouTube, the percentage they get, what they pay back. And most people don't understand, but a lot of it is sponsorship. So a lot of
Yeah.
the money that's made is through people investing money in their videos, not what YouTube pays them.
I mean, you see a
A
pretty
pretty good
decent
penny.
amount.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. I mean, I've
Right.
had a couple of decent videos that really took off and didn't get copyright hit or anything like that. And I mean, you're making like almost $200 a month on
Yeah.
one video.
Right.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
the
it's,
money could be made, right? But
yeah.
because most of the people that I've seen have 500,000 or more subscribers, so they
Yeah.
can quit their job, do YouTube, live comfortably, get sponsorships, do everything. It's just that like I'm brand new to this, and I'm not even close to monetizing my channel yet. So
Dude, I'll guarantee you there's some seminars out there where you can do a full workshop on just the ins and outs of everything. Because there's so many angles to it, right? Like
sure.
what platform to use. There's a whole diversifying, right? Where it's like you were saying, like you're getting some ad revenue, but at the same time you're building up your community and you're getting money through Patreon, and then you're getting money through, people who are sponsoring you, and
Hmm.
and that's why you've got so many different flavors of I knew a YouTuber out there who literally just sits and cranks out like 30 videos a day, and probably 80% of them are copyright hit, but the 20% that leak through, it adds
Right.
up. And he was able to quit his job. He's got no community. He doesn't do anything else like, Discord or any other groups. But yeah, but then you've got the other people who kind of seem to, focus more on their community, and
Right.
there's so many ways to do it. And I mean, a lot of it's confusing, man. Like
Sure.
even just like me, I've got merch, right? But I don't know if it works. I don't know if you can get in there and buy something. I set it up one day
Yeah.
and I tried to upload a few of my things. It's like, well, it's the quality's not good enough, so they kick it out. But then you turn around, and you see it again on YouTube, like it's there. I'm like, whoa, wait, there's that thing
Yeah.
that they just said doesn't work. Like, I don't know how it works.
So one of my followers on TikTok screenshotted the YouTube video in her feed. One of my videos popped up. And so she screenshotted it and sent it to me. And I was like, that's pretty awesome because obviously it's sending out now, right? I'm getting to the
Yeah,
point where YouTube is seeing like my traction, but my subs are low. And that's kind of where, it hurts me with famous people in the industry. When I asked them to be guest on my channel, they're like, well, how many subs do you have? And I was like, I don't know, 150 maybe. And they're like, yeah,
yeah,
you need at least 10,000 or at
it's
least
so hard to get
50,000.
past. Like
Right.
you hit that critical mass where you just finally start to.
Yeah.
And there's a trick too in knowing how to ride the algorithm. You know, like I could break. I know quite a bit about how the algorithm works. I could sit and break it down, but it gets
Yeah.
complicated. And
And it's tough because, so when I go live on TikTok, I always talk about positivity. I always shout out my guest, anybody who's been a guest, anybody who wants to be a guest, I always say. But the issue that like the one thing that I find the most difficult is when I have people that are like, oh, I'll subscribe to your channel, and they subscribe. And then I was like, but help me do the rest. Give me the thumbs up, give me a thumbs down, make a comment, do all the other stuff that's involved in it. And
yeah,
it's hard because, I try to use those platforms to get eyes on my YouTube channel, which is obviously where I want to be. But, I kind of ran into that, where it's like, you find yourself doing the sub for sub thing, right? And it's like,
yep.
so, but I'm
Because
new, right? So,
you're right. If they never turn around and watch your stuff, then the sub
right.
doesn't do much. And like for a long time, my wife, what she would do is she would like hit play on my video, like it, and then turn it off. I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? She's like, well, I'm giving you a view. I'm like, no, it also looks at like watch time, and
Yeah.
all kinds of other stuff. So it's just so much to it, man. So
I
much.
know
And that's why I told
crazy.
you, I think I had this conversation with you before. Your most important thing possible for your algorithm is your click-through rate. That's what your whole algorithm is based on. So like if somebody looks at your uh, thumbnail and it's not appealing enough to click, then your click-through rate, if it's below 3%, your engagements drop. If it's above 3%, your engagements rise.
Mhm.
So it's just kind of like this logarithmic formula. Once you hit 3%, and you will eventually, because it'll just eventually go so high to where it evens up and you plateau. Once you hit 3% click rate through rate, it stays there. It's really weird, man.
Huh.
So that's why the thumbnail is so important, because
Yeah.
people have to, even people who don't know who you are, they got to look at me like, oh shit.
Right.
So start
So
showing
that's what
some
I'm hoping,
cleavage or
right? Like
something, man.
I'm new to it, and I just try to be positive and
Yeah,
be uplifting and get through everything that's going on. So it's
absolutely.
it's a unique anomaly. But I had one last question about the Unleash the Archers and the stuff with Scott.
Yeah.
So after you're done with the interview, and does he have to give you the green light to post it, or do you kind of send it to him to make sure he's cool with everything on, or just go ahead and put it up?
No, I just kind of let them know, like, okay, hey, thanks. I'm gonna edit this and probably post it in a day or two.
Okay.
And I'm always bummed because I've done 4 interviews, well, 3 that I've published. Excuse me. Not a single person has turned around like Scott doesn't. Hey, thanks for the interview. Like no comments, and then they
Yeah.
never like posted on their social stuff. It that bugs me. I'm like, man,
Right.
come on, man, help a brother out a little bit. You
That's
want people to see this? Share it.
yeah.
Don't
So
make me do all the
that
work. Damn it.
so
You know.
ironically enough, that was going to be my follow-up question is how are they with putting you out on saying, hey, I did this interview with History Buffer. I did this interview with they don't
I haven't. No, I haven't seen it
is
yet.
that their marketing team, you think, telling them not to do that?
Well, I reached out to Natalie from Napalm Records and I asked her, I'm like, hey, the interview went really well. I think people really like it. Like people don't see interviews with Scott. They just don't. There's a ton with Brittany. There's a ton with everybody else, but not Scott. And she's like, well, we don't. And she gave me a whole explanation as to why they don't.
Right.
So I felt a little better. Like when I first did Melissa Bonnie, I was like just devastated that they didn't share it. I was expecting it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, man, maybe it went wrong. Maybe she didn't like me. Maybe I creeped her out, I don't know. But I just think that's just the way they do it, I guess. But then again, you turn around and like Elizabeth Zarkov or whoever from like Charismatic Voice, Napalm Records will blast that out. But again, she's got like 500,000 subs.
I get it.
So that plays a part too.
Now, are you able, like with his permission, can you attach it to his socials, or are you not allowed to?
I didn't even try. I didn't even ask. I probably could.
I mean, because that's kind of how I sneak into a lot of people's, like, I don't want to say DMs because I don't do that, but like on their page, I'll like and comment something and I'll drop a link to my channel and I'll be like, hey, if you guys ever want to do an interview or sit down and chat, hit me up. And so that's kind of how I came across American Overdose, because they were on the Mushroom Head page that I had clicked on, and I liked their comment. They liked my comment back, and I dropped my podcast link on their page. I went to, American Overdose.
Smart.
I liked them and followed them, and I dropped my link in. And normally Facebook is very good about catching it, right? They're like, you can't promote your own stuff on somebody else's page. It's not allowed. It's not part of it. Well, it snuck through. And I was like, so American Overdose sent me a message. It was like, they gave me the thumbs up with the little heavy metal emoji, right? And I was like, awesome. So I actually sent them a PM on Facebook. I was like, hey, I'm the guy that sent you the link. And so we just started chatting, and now I'm on all their socials and they're on all mine. But that was just kind of like, I kind of skimmed the system, if you will. I just kind of popped in and got lucky that, it let me slide and that it popped up.
Yeah.
So
and I'd like to get a lot more people besides musicians,
Sure.
like I did a video, I'm trying to branch out a lot more than music. I did a video about Lovecraft, and there was a video game that I kind of reviewed,
Mm-hmm.
and the developer actually commented like, hey, thanks so much for, talking about my game. And I'm like, oh, cool. So I'm like, hey, you want to hop on my channel? We can do it. Just, I'm always trying,
Yeah. So when you network, are you, like, I'm pretty direct, right? I have no shame, right? I will send out a link and say, hey, I have a podcast. Do you want to be on it? Yes or no? And I'll just kind of keep pressuring them to be like, hey, be a guest. We'll talk about anything you want to talk about. And so I think persistency kind of pays off, because I think a lot of what I've been doing now has been like kind of just reaching out to people that like I abnormally wouldn't have talked to. But I'm like, hey, I have a podcast. It's a platform if you want to use it. And like I said, so I've reached out to some pretty high, level people in the industry as far as, YouTube goes and interviewship goes and things like that, of people that I'm fans of that are like, hey, kind of like you're saying, if you're on my show, can you just share it out? Like if you want to do it. So I've reached out to a few people that have, 100,000 plus subscribers. And we're like, hey, would you mind just sitting down and talking with me about anything, whatever you're interested in doing? If it's your truck build, if it's your, we could talk about overlanding, we could talk about guns, we could talk about, knives, whatever you're into. Cause, that's kind of what, I want to talk about what they're passionate about. So I don't know. I've just kind of been relentless in my networking.
You know what I want on my channel next? I'm determined. I want a flat earther on my channel.
Yeah.
I'm talking like high up. Somebody, one of those high up grand poobahs of flat earth, man, because I fell down this rabbit hole and I couldn't sleep for like a week because
go ahead. I'll send you some links on Instagram. But there's a few people that they believe in the Antarctica theory, the wall, right?
Yeah, the ice wall, yeah.
Okay, so what's on the other side of that wall? They say it's another world that we don't know about. That's why no one can fly over it. And there's been a few people, helicopters have taken pictures of another lakes and land and forest that lives on the other side of that thing. And they say that there's a mere Earth that's right next to us that we don't even know about. Like they don't want to. And that goes into the flat Earth, because they're like, if the Earth is a globe, that doesn't exist. If it's flat, you can get across it. And so that's kind of where it plays into the whole trajectory of us being flat and then living, under the bubble, the dome.
Firmament, yeah.
Firmament, yeah. So it transcends into the whole conspiracy theory, right? About rockets' trajectories, us ever getting to the moon, why we can't break the glass, nuclear bombs in the air because they're trying to break the firmament, they're trying to break the mold of the stratosphere that we can't ever get through. So it's a
Mhm.
unique kind of perspective of,
Yeah, unique. That's a good word for it.
yeah.
But yeah, no, yeah, it's just I joined like the Facebook group because I thought it was just kind of like satire or whatever.
So
And I'm
what's
like,
your
wow,
perspective on it
what do you think it is?
now that we're
Are you a
so
flat earther? Are we gonna sit? We could have this talk right now. Let's go.
so I'm
Have you on?
so I'm not, but I'm intrigued by the people who are, right? Like they give a great, they do a very good job of their position and why they are, right?
Not
They're
really.
it's
But I mean, I that's why I want to talk to him because it's like
yeah,
I want to know, like, why? My question is why? Like, okay, the sheer magnitude of people that have to be in on this. It's not
correct.
just NASA. It's
No, it's
not
not.
just the space agencies. It's every, my brother. He sends satellites. He works for Lockheed Martin. He sends satellites up for the defense network. He oversees launches and things.
Sure.
So he's in on it, right? Then obviously, and then I'm probably in on it because like it's come on, man, engineering.
So right. So I've written articles for the government. NASA's my latest one was, how to basically create a new community in space. What would you do? And they wanted some law enforcement perspective. And I was like, just from a satire dilemma, I'm like, who's going to run it? What government are you going to pick? Is it going to be a socialism? Is it going to be communism? Is it going to be a democracy? Is it going to be like, who's going to run this new world? What are you going to pick? Because you could pick anything you want. Are you going to have officials? Is it going to be people that you send there? Is it going to be the best and brightest that go? So it was just this whole topic of like, how would you start a new society in space if we adapted another planet? And they wanted perspective on it. So the studies of world, of what's in our universe is proven, right? So that we have other planets, there's other, we're in the Milky Way, that's our galaxy. There's other galaxies that we don't know of that exist, infinite spectrum. But from a standpoint of just knowing what is out there, the flat earth thing to me doesn't make sense. But it's interesting when you listen to their perspective about it, because they will tell you on a circular map, they'll say, why is a flight from New York to, I think it was the Netherlands, if the flight got diverted, why do they go to this area? And it's like, it doesn't make sense. And then when you put it on a flat map, it's like, oh, well, it does make sense. That's the halfway point. That's where they would go. So they make the argument on flight statistics, right? So like when you look at it from a round globe, the landing points don't make sense. But when you flatten it out, it makes perfect sense. That's where they would fly over if the map was flat. They go back to the ancient text where the first maps were drawn flat. It was a flat map. And that's kind of where they say, over
I
the course
mean,
of time.
think about it. When you walk outside, you don't know any better, and you look up. That's what it looks like. It looks like the Earth is flat, and there's a bowl
Sure.
on us. That's what it looks like. So I mean, and I see that a lot. Oh, they all. How could they all be wrong? Well, because that's what. And they also had a very small understanding of their world, and I think
Right.
that's what I see a lot with flat earthers is just this. They think that the Earth is literally the size of a like it's super tiny, and then they don't understand the size and sheer. Here, let me just give a great example because here's what they try to do. They'll be like, here's one that I like, right? So 6,000 years ago, they had constellations. We could see where the constellations were, right? We have record of them. They knew where they were and they named whatever, right? So 6,000 years later, constellations are still in the same spot. Now, if you look at the speed we travel around the sun, the speed that the sun travels around the galaxy, in 6 years, we've traveled 25 times 10 to the 12th power miles. Okay. And they're like, and you mean to tell me that those stars didn't change? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then they might drop and that's it. And everybody's like, ooh, good point. That's really, really far. And the stars are all in the same spot. That makes no sense. You're right. But here's you got to break it down. You got to look into it a little bit, right? 25 times 10 to the 12th power miles is 5 light years. A light year is 5 times 10 to the 12th power miles. Okay. So 5 light years you've moved. Now, the closest stars to us are about 4 light years away. Alpha Centauri, 4 light years. Okay. So we've traveled a little bit further than the closest star that is to us, right? So now you got to ask the question, okay, you know how a big swimming pool, did you guys ever, you and your buddies ever get in a swimming pool and make like a whirlpool?
Yeah.
Everybody goes around in a circle. Think of that as the Milky Way, right? And inside of that, we're a tiny bug, a dead bug, right? And in our night sky, so all of our constellations and everything, we only see our direct neighbors. We only see stars that are about 100 light years away. That's as far as we can see with the naked eye. So we just see our little neighbors, right? And in that time, in that pool, you've traveled about 1 inch and you can only see the bugs that are a couple inches away from you. So everything's moving in one direction at the same speed around the Milky Way, which is 150,000 light years across. We've moved 5, right? So that's what that's the part that's left out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like that with almost every argument. Like, well,
Sure.
it doesn't make sense. You know, it's like,
so yeah, so I think like the I think the main argument, like I said, is the maps where they look at like the flight logs and they so I think that's the one. The other one is the idea of the first ancient maps, you know, because obviously before Galileo and Da Vinci and all these people started looking in space and to find where our atmosphere is, where the stars are, the North Star, how we are, you know, traveling. And before they were able to figure this out, they watched the sky, right? So every major event was based on the moon and the stars and where it was in time. So they obviously spent their lives looking in the sky to find out answers. So
yeah.
when you like, you know, I'm not a physicist, I'm not a scientist, I don't really know the whole, you know, equations of everything, but from the little bit I've seen of, you know, when you look into the likelihood of our atmosphere, and you kind of, you know, explain the theory of everything, it doesn't, the flat Earth thing to me doesn't make sense. And now I know Neil Tyson deGrasse was on Joe Rogan, right? And he was kind of explaining how this works. And he was kind of laughing at the flat earthers saying that, like, we know it's round. We've seen these guys that do like the guy from Red Bull, right? So he went up into space and jumped out of the thing down into our atmosphere, right? So he was in space. He had the body cam on. You can see the Earth. He's above it. He was, I don't know, a mile or two in space. He did a jump off of the thing. He jumped out of the craft into our atmosphere with a body cam on, and you can see him break the speed. He's flying down. He parachutes down. He lands. So I don't. You can't fake that, right? Like there's no like that was it was a one shot.
It was a fisheye lens. That's what made it
Yeah.
curve. What, you know what I mean? Like,
right. So
there's no,
you know, in all likelihood, that was legit. That you know he did that, right? And so
right.
then you take the other aspect of it from like James Cameron going into the one man deepest part of the sea, right? So when you look at what we know in space and what we know we only know how far our ocean goes to our deepest knowledge. The ocean's infinite. It goes to the core of the earth. No one knows how deep it really truly is, right? Like we can only understand the depths of that. So when you look at our earth from the sky to the bottom of the ocean, you kind of look at the totality of everything, and it's like it doesn't make sense that it would be flat from that perspective.
Right.
So I think that it's not a wrong thing, but I think that more of the science and the technology shows that it's round and that we do have a galaxy, we do have a solar system. We you know we know where the moon is at. Whether we've been there or not is irrelevant, but we have trajectory to get there, right?
Right.
So
well, it's like I even understand why the moon landing would have been faked. I at least can wrap my brain around it and get it. There's a payoff to it, you know,
sure.
like we were in an arms race with Russia. You know, we it was like a matter of national security to make it there before they did. You know, it was a big deal. So like if they got to the point where like, listen, we got to scrap this for whatever reason, it's too dangerous, too expensive, too complicated, whatever. But let's just go ahead and say we did it. And there's a much smaller group of people who would have to be in on it, right?
Sure.
But I still believe it happened. But I get it. This thing makes no sense. Like just the conspiracy theory part alone.
Yeah.
Payoff versus the sheer amount of people who would have to be in on it. Like did that right there is just it's just like
so one of the guys that I kind of look up to as far as podcasting goes, Sean Ryan. He's kind of my guy. He's kind of like who I emulated my show after. You know, doing like a conversation style. having different guests in different realms and all walks of life. And he had Stephen Greer on his show. And Dr. Stephen Greer is all about UFOs and astrology and all the kinds of stuff that is the unknown with aliens, technology, things
That's
like
pretty
that.
cool. Yeah, that
And it
sounds
was
cool.
a really unique perspective because as you start looking in like Dr. Greer, he was the same way. He worked for these government programs that basically they tried to replicate spacecraft. That he says that, you know, everything that we've done is taken technology from other orbits that we've seen, that we've come across. So they asked him about aliens. He's like, that does exist. They do have craft that they know of that they try to replicate. They try to do that. And then he was talking a little bit about the Egyptians. And he had another guest on that was all about sound waves. And he said that's how they were able to move those blocks, right? That the Egyptians figured out sonic waves. That's how they were able to move these giant stones off the ground, basically levitate them. And so it was a unique thing to like get, but it all goes in, it ties into the, you know, gravitational Earth's pull, how they're able to, you know, captivate these sound waves, what comes in from outer space, what, so it's kind of a unique thing. And when you take all that evidence, it's hard to believe that the Earth is flat. You know, it really, you know, and again, the Simpsons kind of get, you know, the credit for, you know, the movie that they were in the dome and that they were trying to get out and that, you know, Homer was stuck in, you know, they lived inside this glass dome and they were trying to break out of it. And everyone's like, Simpsons predict the future, right? They're time travelers like Matt Groening's, you know, but it's kind of, you know, it's a different perspective, but it really set the tone for the flat earthers because they were like, well, Simpsons predicted all the future and now Homer's in a glass dome in a movie.
But how it's so it's just over the town, right? It's not
Yeah, it
it's
was
not
over
the earth.
Springfield. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, okay.
So
But yeah, no, I know. It's so it would just be interesting to have somebody on and just
yeah, that'd be
really
cool.
dig down why and all that good stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, so send me that link and I'll take a look and see
Yeah,
if I
for
can
sure. I'll send you the
find
two Sean
anybody.
Ryan. The two Sean Ryan shows, I'll send you those links with the guest that he had because it was unique. And then, like I said, on Instagram, you could fall down that rabbit hole relatively quickly, right? So if you watch one video, then you'll see another video, then another video. And I went down that hole for a little bit and I just kind
Yeah,
of was like,
have a
it was
foil hat
unique.
on in a week.
You know, the Antarctica one was what made the most sense. That was the one theory that if they could prove that, then that would be the biggest one that the Earth is actually flat. If there's a land outside of the Arctic Circle and that they basically say it's a giant wall that nobody could get through, but there has been pilots that have flown over it and have taken video of what they say is on the other side, and that would disprove the Earth is round.
Yeah. I mean, I
Because
had
they
a
say
buddy
it's a
who
mirror.
worked over there like for a couple of years. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know.
And so that was another one too that was very interesting because um it was Neil Armstrong and the other guy, Buzz Aldrin. Um, they went to the Arctic Circle and they said that like, you know, it's a very bizarre thing of what's going on down there. And they say that they're hiding a lot that they don't want you to know about going past the circle, like getting past the wall in the Arctic. It's a very unique thing. That's I think the one, if you're going down that, you know, a conspiracy of a flat Earth, that's the biggest argument is that what's on the other side of the Arctic. But I'll send you the links. Like I saved all the
Yeah,
links.
please.
Yeah, it's a unique thing. So
Wear my life jacket.
So we're you know coming up on the hour. So I'm glad you're feeling good. You know, I wish you all the best of luck in the future. And then you know, why don't we do this? In a few months, I'll have you back on, and we'll see what we come up with, and we'll talk about this. We'll see if we get you hooked up with
Yeah.
somebody that's a flat earther. We'll put
It'll
you
be
in.
The third time I've been on you. First time somebody's been 3 times on your show.
Yeah, right. So we'll make
Break
that
that
happen.
record
So,
too.
yeah, so we'll do that. So as always, thanks for being a guest, and I'll send you all those links. Guys, if you're watching this live or on YouTube, follow History Buff. I'll put his links in the description of the video once it goes over to YouTube. So, you know, subscribe to his channel, give him a like. Super interesting. And, you know, thanks again for being back on. And like I said, we'll plan a few months and I'll get you all that stuff tonight. I'll send you all the stuff.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, sir.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks for being here. And guys, I'm One Fun Guy Podcast across all the platforms. If you like this video, please share it. And again, follow History Buff, subscribe to his stuff. And we will see you in a few months then. We'll plan for maybe August, September.
Sounds good.
All right, perfect. All right, have a good night. I'll see you soon.
All right.